I now call to order the 1564th meeting of the General Student Senate, 17th meeting of the 45th session. Welcome and good evening, everybody. And I will begin with the notice that this meeting is being broadcast via Zoom and the recording will be publicly available on YouTube. Next, I will read the landing. The University of Maine recognizes that it is located on Arch Island and the homeland of the Penobscot Nation. Issues of water and territorial rights and encroachment upon sacred sites are ongoing. Penobscot homeland is connected to the other Wabanaki tribal nations, the Passamaquoddy, Manatee, and Micmac, through kinship, alliances, and diplomacy. The university also recognizes that the Penobscot Nation and the other Wabanaki tribal nations are distinct, sovereign, legal, and political entities with their own powers of self-governance and self-determination. The clerk will now vote.
Cynthia Schoenheim. Here. Ezekiel Dorr.
Here.
Nate Fang.
Here.
Jordan Thompson.
Here.
Hayden Buzzell.
Here.
Dylan Mership.
Here.
Maggie Johnson. Here. Casper Cowan.
Here.
Joshua Baum.
Here.
Juliana Dolan. Isabella La Madrid. Here. Caleb Kearns. Matthew Weber.
Here.
Vassar Harvey. James Reader Seward.
Here.
Marcus McLean.
Here.
Bo Mishu.
Here.
Meredith Waters. Here. Darren Martone.
Here.
Kyle Ricker. Zachary Sella.
Here.
Ethan Karate.
Here.
Hazel Sparks. Here. Caleb Villa.
Here.
Taylor Stanford. Here. Keegan Tripp.
Here.
Memphis Peterson.
Here.
Oliver Waugh.
Here.
Dylan Lehman.
Here.
Neil Rocky.
Here.
Elizabeth Oldfield. Here. Abby Downer. Here. Zoe Stankovitz. Here. Olivia Britton. Here. Riley Mills.
Here.
Mackenzie LeBlanc. Proxy. Amanda Levesque. Here. Jacob Harquist.
Excuse.
Hannah Blanchett.
Excuse.
Zachary Wentworth.
Here.
John Guzman. Pascal
Here.
Tyler Domingue Baez.
Here.
Danny Tanaka.
Here.
And Gloria Stelco. Yeah.
Thank you. I am now looking for approval of the September 17th, 2024 minutes and this agenda. Senator Bowman.
Move to approve the 9/17/2024 minutes in this agenda.
Second.
If that is the pleasure of the Senate, that is adopted. We will now move on to the Robert's Rules tip of the week, which is by popular demand, a point of information. As read in Robert's Rules, a request directed to the chair or through the chair to another officer or member for information relevant to the business at hand, but not related to parliamentary procedures. Now for the general good and welfare, any non-member may address the General Student Senate for not more than 5 minutes. Seeing none, we will move on to new senators, officer appointments and resignations. Taylor Stanford, are you here?
Yes.
If you could please rise. Also, give me a second. Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name.
I, Taylor Stanford,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support and uphold
that I will support and uphold
the Constitution of Student Government, Inc.
the Constitution of Student Government, Inc.
and all other rules and guidelines
and all other rules and guidelines
to which I will be held.
to which I will be held.
Further, I swear
Further, I swear
to well and faithfully discharge
to well and faithfully discharge
the duties of the office
the duties of the office
upon which I am about to enter,
upon which I am about to enter,
while representing my constituency
while representing my constituency
and the University of Maine.
and the University of Maine.
Congratulations. Seeing no club maintenance or club presentations, we will move on to our guest speaker. And I would like to introduce everyone to Dr. Sabrina DeTurk, here to present on the strategic re-envisioning process. Did I say that right?
You did, indeed. Thank you.
We'll get your presentation up But feel free to start whenever you'd like.
Sure. So hi, everybody. Dr. Sabrina DeTurk. I'm a lecturer in the Honors College. And since about July 1st, I have been serving in a temporary volunteer capacity as the project director for what President Mundy has established as a strategic re-envisioning process for the University of Maine and, of course, University of Maine and Chimes. I wanted to make sure that we got in front of you all fairly early on in the semester so that you'd be kind of aware of what's happening. This presentation is just a really brief and fairly high-level overview of what's been done over the summer. I'm sure that most of you were not paying attention to any of this in the summer, which is totally understandable. And so we want to kind of get you up to speed, and I would be happy at the end to both take questions, but also maybe even more importantly, to hear how you all think you would like to be involved moving forward and how we can best keep you informed. Can I get the next slide, please? Thank you. And actually, you can just go right ahead to the next one. We'll make this even easier. So I'm going to talk about why strategic re-envisioning and our current situation at the same time. So I don't think it's a shock to any of you, unless possibly this is your very first semester at the University of Maine, that the university has been in a period of change and transition in terms of trying to understand how to work with some of the drivers of change just in our world generally. So things like falling numbers of students who might even be graduating from high school and be interested in looking at the University of Maine. Things like changes in terms of how technology, particularly things like generative AI, are impacting our approach to education. Things like climate change and trying to understand how to educate for a world that many of us find difficult to even envision moving forward. And of course, we also specifically at the University of Maine, although again, I think many of you are probably aware this is not unique to UMaine, have our own budgetary pressures that are making us realize that business as usual may not be the way that we can move forward for the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years and beyond. So if we think about kind of, and I want to stress, and the president would absolutely support this. In fact, she would find me remiss if I didn't say it. The re-envisioning process is not a budgeting exercise. However, it is very much aligned with and attached to the university's need to get to a multi-year financial plan that will result in a balanced budget for the institution. So when we look at things like the fact that our tuition and fees are about half of our revenues at the institution, yes, tuition increased about 3% in this current academic year. Yes, we are getting some more funds in terms of indirect costs that are associated with grants. But on the other side, we want to make sure that UMaine remains affordable for folks. We also know, as I said, that there's a crunch in terms of how many students are even going to be going to college, much less if you look at New England specifically, the numbers of graduating seniors are going down over the next years. We've been doing pretty well in terms of retention. We're at about 82% right now, which is awesome. But we don't know quite yet where we're going to come in overall in terms of student credit hours this year. They have been relatively flat. So that's all a very, kind of long-winded way of saying tuition is not going to be the thing that is going to get us out of a current budget gap. And it is not probably going to be the only thing that can move us forward as we look forward to the long term. Can I get the next slide, please? There are some other stressors at UMaine that impact our current situation. So compensation costs have increased substantially and will continue to do so to keep up with cost of living. And I think some of you may know that we have a pretty significant issue in terms of some of our deferred maintenance and in terms of the needs that we have for renovations, for thinking about how we're going to use space moving forward, for understanding what our physical plan, again, should look like to be able to make that match our ambitions as, the state's premier land grant, sea grant, space grant institution. Could I get the next one, please? So late last spring, President Franklin Bundy really started to charge for cabinet, other leaders on campus, deans, et cetera, directors of research institutes, to think about what should or what would UMaine look like if we were designing it today. And that is the kind of heart of this idea of strategic re-envisioning. What would we change? What would we focus on? How do we make sure that we are sustainable financially and otherwise, inclusive, and that our future can continue to be dynamic, can continue to grow, can continue to shift to meet the needs of our students, our alums, our constituents in the state, and so on. And so the strategic re-envisioning process has been organized to try to help think through and answer some of those questions. Again, not as an exercise about budgeting, but as an exercise that will inform the development of a multi-year financial plan that will get us on a path to sustainability and a balanced budget. Can I get the next one? You may, depending on whether you've seen one of the president's presentations in the last year or so, have seen these three kind of interlocking circles. So these are some of the things that underpin who we are as an institution. So integrating teaching and research, sustaining the health of our planet, growing a thriving and inclusive community of learners. Those are all underpinning the SRE process, but I'm going to get to some other things that are also kind of the guiding principles that we've been working with. Can I get the next? So we sort of looked at those three intersecting circles, and through a process of there was a retreat last spring, there was a town hall with some pretty substantial participation from all sectors of the community. Lots of things were surfaced that led to the development of these guiding principles, which are helping us to think through how we want to re-envision the university. So I'm not going to read all of them because you guys are very capable of reading, and we can certainly make the slides available to you. Many of them I have touched on even in the remarks that I've made so far. I think it's important to note that the one about remaining residential while also thinking through how we can increase our online offerings. And I think it's also really important to note the one about fostering a supportive and inclusive community, and particularly prioritizing the well-being of faculty, staff, and students. Could I get the next one? So since about June, the retreats and town hall happened in May, and then by June, there was a process of beginning to think about how can we use those guiding principles and numbers of other ideas that came up through the retreat, through the town hall, through suggestions from cabinet and deans and so on, to create a set of themes that could be explored in more detail. And I'll go to those in just a second. But though we ended up with 13, so there may be a 14th coming forward in a little bit. There's a set of folks who are faculty and staff who are the leads for working groups who are analyzing those themes and really looking at, kind of how could we use the topics, the themes to drive ideas about re-envisioning. I think if we go to the next one, that will make more sense. This is just the names of the folks who are the provost fellows and team leads. You may recognize some of them as your faculty. There's also some staff members on there. Can you go one more? And again, I'm not going to read all 13 of these, but these are the initial themes that we've been focusing on. And I purposely use the word initial because this is not to say that it's an exhaustive list. I've actually just referenced there may be a 14th one coming in fairly soon. And there may be others that emerge as we go along, but you can see the breadth of these. So this is everything from looking at, if we start with number one, how do we use space on campus? Are there things we could be doing differently that would better suit us as we, move further into the 21st century? How are we finding opportunities for economic development and engagement across the state? How are we providing the best student support that we can? What about our athletics? What could maybe be done differently there? We're all across the board. Every person who's leading one of these has a working group of maybe 15 to 20 folks that they've been collaborating with to identify specific ideas that might be relevant to the theme that could be explored further, and also to generate kind of criteria that they think would be useful to use if we were evaluating an idea in that space. So let me give you an example of what I mean by that. I'm going to use theme number 2 about enhancing academic programs. So let's say that we decided, and I'm going to make something up that's really silly, just so that we don't have a quote that says, you know, Dr. DeTurk claimed we're going to have a new major next. We are going to have a new major in, I'll use everybody's favorite, underwater basket weaving. We think that underwater basket weaving is going to be a fast-growing major that will, you know, drive lots of students, that will allow us to develop exciting new research avenues, that will support the communities in the state of Maine, et cetera. But we need to understand what should we be asking ourselves to really know if that's the case. So these working groups are thinking through, well, what would we really want to interrogate? We'd want to know, well, what would be the revenue applications? We'd want to know, well, would it take students away from our other programs in above ground basket weaving if we were to do this? Would we have to hire faculty who come at a premium because there's only 2 of them in the whole country and we'd have a really hard time getting them? So thinking through kind of what do we need to ask to decide if a re-envisioning idea is a good one or not. So that's a lot of the work that's going on right now, trying to think through some of those things. You can go ahead and move on to the next one there. This just gives you a kind of idea of how many people are involved in this. We've been trying to regularly get feedback over the summer from, you know, again, deans and cabinet and so on. But we're also really interested in getting more feedback from the community at large. And so that's where we'll kind of get to at the Q&A. I also want to let you know that we do have this online tool, and you're welcome to scan the QR code if you're interested, which is where you can actually submit your own ideas. So if you think that the major in underwater basket weaving is something that the strategic re-envisioning process should really be considering as an effective strategy for moving UMaine forward, you can submit that to us. You can just go ahead to the next one there. So right now we're coming to the end of what we've called phase 2, prioritizing and assessing. That's kind of what I've just been describing. By next week, September 30th, we should have some input from the working groups around these ideas about criteria, around what they see as potential positive and negative impacts of going in certain directions around their themes. You can go one more there. And then starting around October 1st, we'll be moving into the 3rd phase of really trying to test out these ideas, putting hard numbers around them where that's appropriate, seeking additional feedback from relevant groups, and getting some of them to the point where the president feels like she wants to say, yes, UMaine is going to be the leader in underwater basket weaving, and we're going to move forward with that. And, you know, here we go. So not all of these are things that are going to be realistic for the next kind of fiscal year, but certainly some of them will be changes that will be envisioned for the next 2 to 3 years as we work on the multi-year financial plan. I believe that is the last thing that I have here, and then just wanted to kind of open it for Q&A, either clarifying anything that I've said, or as I said, if you all have suggestions of how you would like to be engaged in the process, we'd really be happy to hear them.
Great, thank you. Any questions for the speaker, Senator Waters?
I want to thank you for coming here and telling us about the strategic plan and introducing us to it, but it's really late to introduce us to this. And I don't know why a town hall happened in May when students aren't here to participate and be an active member of that town hall. I also am very concerned about the theme of embracing and growing online programs at this university. They're being embraced and they're growing right now. And as they're growing, they're leaving the in-person students behind. We are suffering because of these online programs being promoted, and the university isn't ready for that because students are having to not be able to graduate without taking online classes and then getting fees for those online classes, and then the university is using that to just collect fees. That's how it feels as a student. I feel like it's great that we're talking to students now, but we're also in phase 2, right? And maybe students should have been included in phase 1 and in every part of that process. It's really hard to believe a single one of those themes was inspired by a student's need or perspective on the university.
Do you have a question?
I thought we were allowed to comment.
Are there any other questions for the speaker, or did you want to
I
respond?
I can happily respond. So point taken, and I will say that there are faculty and staff who probably also feel that this has gone fast and would be concerned that a lot of it happened over the summer. I said that it is not a budgeting exercise, and it is not. That said, we have a commitment to our board of trustees to get to a sustained balanced budget sooner rather than later within the next 2 budget cycles. And so there is an urgency to the work that unfortunately in this case meant that it needed to start at a time when, you're right, and that the whole campus community wasn't able to be here. I want to be really, really clear that nothing has been decided. We are still at a point where we're really actively seeking feedback and recommendations, and those will inform the actual decisions. So I see the work that's done to date as kind of setting some groundwork, but it is not decision-making work. It is not even recommendation work. It's kind of framework work. I also want to suggest if you go to just Google strategic re-envisioning UMaine and you'll find our website. You can find the names of the people who are leading each of the themes. I would love for you to share your feedback about the online piece with Laura Wilson, who's heading up that group. I think should welcome the student perspective, and that is the kind of thing that can certainly shape our criteria, our evaluative structure as we're moving forward. So please reach out to Laura and feel free to say that I told you to do that.
Are there any other questions to the speaker, President Tripp?
First of all, thank you again for coming in and presenting. I know I got a similar presentation from a colleague of yours at the alumni board meeting. I think kind of understanding and echoing Senator Waters' concerns, but also putting into perspective the way things do work at this university. I think that we have, especially as we come into this year as a bunch of new faces into student leadership, have a pretty big stake in a project like this, and with opinions and concerns such as Meredith's. I encourage us all to get involved in this process. I mean, this is the student outreach project. It's true, this university is also a business. Sometimes things, like you said, are urgent, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't backtrack or capitalize when the university is extending this branch. And I also think to that point, it does sound like the university has waited in most, if not all cases, which is a big step in the right direction to wait for student feedback to make decisions. So I do appreciate that. I have a question for you specifically about the first point. Something that's been kind of brewing in my mind since the first one is space optimization. That's something that this body discusses a lot. Students struggle just as much as faculty and staff do when it comes to the space situation on this campus. Anything from getting a space for a club to storage and whatnot. But I'm curious in terms of prioritizing the optimization, where accessibility is falling on the kind of, if you've been involved in this discussion specifically on this point, just because it's increasingly concerning about the state of accessibility on this campus. And we'll all get to goals later. This meeting, we're doing goals. It's our goal meeting, so it's a good meeting to be a part of. But I'm just curious if you have any perspective on that, and how we can go about ensuring that is if we're reprioritizing or re-envisioning what the university would look like in 2020, whatever. I would say accessible for all students. So how do we get there?
Yeah, I mean, so I haven't, the working groups are going to be reporting out in the next week, so I don't want to step and say for sure whether that's a discussion point for that particular working group or not. What I can say is that the work of that team is going to intersect with the work of the Space Advisory Committee that the president set up last year. And I believe that you may have student representation on that somewhere, yeah. I know that that committee, in also intersecting with the Faculty Senate's Committee on Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, has been very concerned about issues of accessibility. So I would see that as a place where some of that kind of comes together. I know that Vice President for Finance, Kelly Sparks, is very aware and concerned about issues of accessibility. And I say all of that to say, it still does not hurt to keep hammering that home. And so if you want to use the idea of the tool or just in these kinds of forums to keep reminding that accessibility has to be part of conversations about space, I think there are more people who are remembering to have that, but we can't have too many people saying that.
Are there any other questions, Senator Emerson?
Yes, so very glad to be here. There was one point that you brought up, I think it was like phase 2 thing, concerns of basket weaving. Now, I remember at least like, sort of like a personal point, I've had a brother that had attended SMCC for carpentry. And I think, like, in relation to my question, you had, mentioned a ton of our basket weaving. Are you like, at least like, is this group looking towards like implementing trade, like any of the trades within University of Maine? And if so, like at least a follow-up question, how is this going to really look like, if this not gonna happen within the next like 2-3 years because of the idea of like students being sort of like, for lack of a better term, being taken away from SMCC? Because I'm all for like having blacksmith or carpentry or electrical, like just electrical types of things. But I know there's like some issues about what the UMS system is gonna ask about that. So I just want to ask about, clarification about that.
So you have very eloquently proven that there is no example that one can pull out that is safe from potentially, you're right, like there could be a conversation about whether UMaine should be thinking about the trades. I will say that I have not heard that conversation. I don't think it is on the radar. I was trying to pull basket weaving as something that would be unlikely to show up on our kind of screen, but you never know. But that said, you're absolutely correct that there's all kinds of system-wide regulations in terms of what we can do. Programs have to go through approval to make sure that we're not stepping on toes of other kinds of institutions. And I just don't, I don't know, I can't never say never, but that is not something, the idea of having programs that are more aligned with the trades is not something that I've heard coming forward at this point.
Thank you.
Sure. Any other questions, Senator Summervin?
I actually have an answer to President Tripp's question earlier. It was regarding the accessibility on campus and space allocation. And so on the 30th, when the Space Advisory Space Committee will present to the president on our document for our criteria for funding in the future, we have a matrix set up, and for the first and highest ranked unit is equity at 25% compared to the other items on the list. And it does include for projects and models for all-inclusive design and equitable access for all. And there's an explanation underneath that, but that is considered going forward for accessibility on campus, and it's rated as our highest priority.
I'm curious then, if that's specific to the space committee, or I guess really what I wanted to make sure, or punch on with our speaker here, was that if we are doing a re-envisioning, if we're going to do kind of like a non-budget, like a more of a morals kind of like long-term look, to make sure that it's a priority on that. But also, it's awesome to hear that the space committee, but does that mean that is in tandem with this, or is that like more of a space committee specific?
In tandem.
Okay, cool.
So all funding requests going forward will be based on this matrix.
Very nice. Good, thank you.
Thank you, Senator Ricker.
Yeah, assuming I hold the condition correctly, or maybe it's slowly going this way, but a large part of what the revision policy does is looking at student engagement, looking at like where students are kind of hitting like a lot of that sort of thing. I was wondering how much, I guess, each example of working groups are filled by overall education, I believe the number was. How much of that entails like student life or like other staff and people who are actually involved on the ground and involving students in the engagement?
Yeah. So I mean, I wouldn't be able to quote you an exact number, but there are a fair number of folks from student life who are involved in the various working groups scattered across different ones. So not just clustered within the kind of student success theme, but across the board. I mean, I'm gonna say I feel that there is substantial, but possibly not sufficient engagement there. And that's why I think we wanted to, you know, get in front of you all and make sure that as we move forward and continue to get community involvement, that we're really hearing the student voice. I think you've been well represented, but that doesn't equate to the same thing as your own voices at the table. So, yeah,
Are there
there are
any-
definitely folks there.
Are there any more questions? We'll do 2 more questions or 1 really, really good question.
So, we mentioned earlier about like priorities with the space committee, does the plan have like a prioritization list? Like I know that you listed them 1, 2, 3, are they ordered that? Is that a plan in the future to order them?
Yeah, so excellent question. So the 1 through 13 has absolutely no priority anything. It's just like the order that they came out of the, you know, I don't know, word processor, and that shows you how old I am. So that said, I do think that as we go into kind of the next part of this, yes, there will be prioritization, and some of that will have to do with, you know, which ones have the best potential for immediate positive financial impact. Some of that will have to do with which ones have the most positive impact on the community. I mean, but there will be a process of figuring out what do we want to focus in on first, what are we gonna think about in the next fiscal year, you know, those kinds of things. I will also say that there's a couple on there, you know, like generative AI. I mean, yes, there may be things that could be done fairly quickly that would move that, but that's also the kind of thing that's gonna shape all of our lives for the next who knows how long. So some of those themes are very much gonna continue for multi-year kind of strategy.
I think. Senator Sparks.
So, for student involvement in this whole project, it seems like it will take quite a solid amount of time. Is there talk of starting a more consistent communication with some group of students? Or is there a will to start some kind of more consistent thing? Because a survey on your end is very inconsistent and on our end, very unreliable. So would there be talks of opening something up?
Sure. So I mean, I think that there would be interest in that. I think that all of us are a little bit uncertain of exactly what things are going to look like as we go into the next phase of this. But I mean, I guess I would look to you all for, you know, sort of what you feel would be the most helpful and effective ways to get involved. Is that by having us come, you know, more regularly to talk with you in this kind of setting? Is that by setting up other kinds of, you know, town hall forums specifically for students? Is that by getting the president to sit down with you? I mean, we're open to hearing what would work the best for you. I'm not gonna stand here and say that I know what the best way is to necessarily engage with students, because I think you know that better than I do. So, and that doesn't mean you have to answer that tonight, but I'm absolutely, you know, you folks happy to get follow-up and suggestions for what that might look like.
Great, thank you. Well, thank you very much for coming. And we do thank you. If anybody does have any more questions, comments, concerns, or ideas, just funnel them through me and I'll get them to Dr. Dessert. And
Yeah.
thank you very much for coming.
Sure, and as I said, feel free to share the slide deck out as well. So, okay, thank you all. Have a good night.
Next, we will move on to executive reports. Questions are open to non-members after.
After you want it.
Everybody else. Say those.
Hi, guys.
All right, welcome to another week of Senate. A few old business stuff. Number one, I am still waiting for the lockers to arrive. Again, I don't know what's going on with these lockers and why everybody is ordering lockers or why they would even take this much time, but they are. But if I don't hear anything by the end of this week, I'm gonna call, and then I'll update you next week. Next, I had a lovely meeting with she was the AOPI president. This was it was really fun to be able to discuss how her chapter and other chapters on campus are kind of shaking off Rush Week. It sounds like we've had a lot of really great engagement on that side, both on the IFC and Penn Health. But UMSG will continue to support those chapters that are kind of lagging behind. We've already started with a few posts to our Instagram. So that was a fun little conversation. It's not very often where chapter leadership and UMSG leadership directly just sit down and kind of catch up. So it was really nice. And I encourage any others who want to sit down with me to do so. And I'll probably be in touch with a few others. Next, new business. I have like a million meetings to set up, so I'm gonna run through them. Number one, UMSG and GSG. That's the graduate student government. Normal, makes sense. Both of our exec teams are gonna meet at some point. We were wanting to wait until we had a solidified GSG representative, which I believe is still kind of in the flux, maybe not, and it doesn't really, we don't have to decide it now. But I'm gonna be making sure that we touch base with all of that. And ensure that gets done within a week or two. Moving on, UMSG and CSI, another important meeting between student government and the Center of Student Involvement. They are our biggest kind of counter partner on campus, and we should make sure that we have at least regularly touch base. And we have a bunch of new faces that need to kind of be immersed into the old guard of CSI. So that'll be helpful. Next one is UMSG and Maine campus. Self-explanatory. We have a lot of fun things in the works. I've been on the phone with the editor-in-chief, Sophia, and we have some one-off projects that we'd like to talk about, as well as some senator spotlights that should be really fun for you guys. So more on that once that happens. Next, I have to set up a meeting with myself and Catherine Huntress from CSI, as she is taking the lead on the esports arena. If you do not know, University of Maine Student Government semi-manages the esports arena. We have a memorandum of understanding, and we dropped, I don't, someone correct me, about like 8-ish grand, 10-ish grand on renovations and repairs last year on the esports arena. So hopefully we won't have to do anything monetarily this year. But I do have to touch base and make sure everything is good on our end. So I'll update you about that. Next, VP Peterson and I have had our first bi-weekly meeting with Dean Dana. Per usual, he sends his well wishes. Everything seems to be going well upstairs, and we're looking forward to having him attend this later this semester, as he usually does. Stop and say hi to everybody. And then additionally, as always, let us know if there are issues you'd like brought up to the dean. That's just a general thing. I'd be happy to have that conversation if there's something you'd like us to address. Later during new business, we'll be doing a survey report walkthrough. I don't think it's currently on the agenda. So Senator, if you wanted to help me out during new business, a motion for a 10-minute, 15-ish minute discussion. It shouldn't be very long. I'm not going to exhaust everybody going through point by point, but there are a few things I'd like to touch base and just get us thinking. It's pretty important, twofold. One, it's important for us to reflect on ways that we can improve, but it's also important that we think about ways that we can improve the survey itself for next year, or this the end of this year. And then another congratulations to our committee chairs. I'm looking forward to see what you all do this year. Please don't hesitate to reach out to us if you need help with literally anything. I have spent far too long compiling contacts and information about this university for you not to use it. So please just send me a message. I'm sure if I can't help, I can find you someone who can. And now into the exciting part, which is that this night, tonight is goals night. If you recall, I've asked all of our execs to come with a few solid goals for the year to kind of set sights on another productive year of student government, but also to give us something to work off. Again, this isn't an exhaustive list. There are going to be more things that come up to this year, and this isn't the only things that we're focusing on, but hopefully we'll get the ideas stirring, especially for the senators who may be assisting us in these projects. So I will start. So, my first goal, is what I'm calling the modernization, optimization, and sustainability of our organization. If that sounds like a bunch of campaign promises, it's because it is. A lot of this is gonna sound familiar to the things that I was talking about last year, but I'm gonna again run through these as just kind of a general gist. What this looks like is governing documents overhaul, polypro, get excited. There's so many things wrong with our documents, from just formatting and grammatical errors to not up-to-date policies, and they don't reflect what we do. Essentially what I would like to see is those things kind of addressed. It's been very apparent that we kind of fix things as they come up and as they cause us problems. But I think it would be useful for us to kind of look at our organization in the aggregate and see where we can cut some fat and make it more efficient. And that's just kind of a general thing. The other thing is that if it's not written in the policies how we do it, we need to either do it that way or change it. That seems like a no-brainer. And the other stuff I won't bore you with, but basically redoing our documents, not in a way that fundamentally alters this organization. We need to ensure that the structure remains, but there's a lot of things written 30 years ago that we can update, that's for sure. Number two is the same idea for, again, under this number one goal of modernization, is same idea for our processes. Think about the SOC changes from 10 to 5. There are just little easy things that we can make lives easier, both for students and ourselves. We should be doing it. I find that we find ourselves kind of sitting in the status quo because it's easy. And when we only have 29 weeks, we have to prioritize and things kind of get lost. So I'm trying to make that a priority now. So we keep that in mind as we move forward. Moving into next, my second goal is what I'm labeling campus safety, accessibility, and service. Again, these are all coming from my campaign promises, so I feel like that's a good thing. I should probably keep to those. But what this looks like is addressing the infrastructure issues that we see. As we discussed tonight, the university is in a very interesting point where we're prioritizing and reevaluating the kind of structure and infrastructure on this campus, from space to housing to other things. And us as student leaders, as we've already seen, we need to make sure that students are in the room, and when they're not, we bridge that gap, and when there are opportunities like the ones that was given to us tonight, we use them. That's why we're here. We're here to kind of take on that effort. There are students across this campus who are really busy, and we've decided to be the ones to take on this side of student leadership. So I encourage you to get involved with that and get your friends involved too. But for my services committee, I would like to get, and security as well, to discuss some pretty glaring issues such as lighting. This is an issue of student safety. So if there are places on campus that are too dark, why? And if it's taking a long time to replace lights, why? And if it's because there's not a lot of, enough resources allocated to this, why? Again, student safety should come first. Next, accessibility. You've already heard me kind of talk about this, but it remains an issue. We see clubs and orgs on this campus starting to form around this issue, coalesce around this issue, and we should be in the forefront of this. If not, standing there leading the charge, making sure that those students are in the room and we're lifting them to that level, because there's no reason why our student accessibility services should be at the top of a hill. Moving next into my third goal, which is kind of the biggest goal, and it is was probably the central goal to VP Peterson and I's campaign, which is the connectivity of campus. We spent last year, the exec team spent a really long time rebuilding the relationship between this organization and the administration. We have a stronger one. It doesn't mean that we don't have work to do, but we're in the room and we should utilize that. But what I want to kind of shift the focus this year is deepening the connection. And as I keep using this because I think it was so well put, but VP Peterson said last year, this org should be the connective tissue. We're in a unique situation. I think that there are like a few kind of factions of this university that don't intertwine as much as I'd like them to. That being student athletes, Greek life, club and orgs, and the non-involved, who are equally as important and sometimes get lost in the sauce. But what I would like to do is look at this in a two-prong approach. Number one, and in terms of centering our relationship with students, we have a bad habit of not getting ahead of things. We need to be on top of stuff a little bit more. We need to be more communicative, and we can always improve on that stuff. And I intend for that to be a central thing. That looks like op-eds with the main campus. That looks like sitting down and doing town halls if we need to, doing our own focus groups. Because sometimes, we can also be really busy and fall into a very similar pattern of, rumor and chaos getting out before the right information does. So I think we should essentially act as best in our ability to make sure we break that down and stay ahead of that stuff. And then that looks like increasing Greek relations. This has been no secret for a long time. There's been a little bit of a disconnect between this body and our Greek life on this campus. There shouldn't be. This is 14% of our student body, some of our strongest leaders, some of our largest pockets of charity and culture on this campus. And I am going to make a conceded effort this year in our office to build relationships, at least with better relationships with our reps. I've already started conversations with individual chapters. How can we improve IFC and Panhouse relationship with their constituencies, ours with theirs, as well as I think we should be involved and be kind of extending an olive branch to this group. We should be involved in Greek Week. Don't know or not. We should have yearly collaborations with this group to ensure that there's communication and goodwill between us. That goes into clubs and orgs. In a year where we're facing a little bit of a difficult financial situation, we find, and it remains very clear that support of student leaders to other student leaders is super duper important. Too often I see student leaders take on massive, clubs and orgs on their own. These are students who are not getting paid. These are students who aren't even necessarily getting, some of the benefits and like business experience that you would get in an org like this, right? These are kids who are going and setting up hammocks in the corner of campus for people. And it's just important that we make sure that student leaders know that we're here to support them, but also create an atmosphere where student leaders will support each other, especially when it comes to fundraising activities. I think it would be really great to see some similar orgs, or even orgs that aren't similar, to working together and doing big fundraisers together, sharing and helping each other with the manpower that is so desperately needed, et cetera, et cetera. And then finally, I want to talk a little bit about student athletes. And speaking with SAC last year and the leadership, myself and VP Peterson visited, and something that they really expressed was a disconnect between themselves and the rest of the student body. I understand why. They have very unique and difficult schedules compared to others, and also they are physically kind of put into a corner of the campus with the athletic facilities being all in the Alphond, what do they call it? The L. And then also a lot of their events and such kind of being focused around those. So I think it would be really cool to somehow play a larger part in getting the larger community involved and excited about athletic events on this campus. Whether that is playing a part in tailgating, getting the word out, doing better in terms of pushing events, or doing like we do the You Beat UNH t-shirt. I don't know, something to get a little bit more of a community base and push more people toward that campus, but also in turn bring those student athletes into the rest of the campus. One way I think that would be really cool is doing some sort of town hall with student entertainment. We talked about this last year, but like after the hockey season, meeting the players, why not? I think that'd be a really cool town hall to do where we could just have students come in and talk to real student athletes. I mean, they do some really cool and hard things. So it'd be really nice. I don't know what it's like to be a student athlete. So to sit down and talk to not just the people that we cheer on every weekend in the Alphond or the fields and various places on campus, but also the coaches and administration. I think there's a lot of folks here who would like to sit down with Coach Barr and hear about all the stuff he's doing for hockey. So yeah, think of it as kind of a aggregate goal in increasing and continuing this this pattern of UMSG playing a bigger part, or at least a more visible part on this campus, and making sure that nobody is kind of falling into the cracks that are just kind of inherent in our university. And now I'll shut up. That is it. Hopefully everybody else's goals are a little bit shorter. I don't know. But again, I really appreciate your guys' dedication to this work. And I'm really excited to see what we do this year.
Thank you. As for my report, good evening, everyone. Just a reminder that as senators, now that we had our elections for Senate positions last week, you are now all obligated to fulfill either this section of holding a committee chairship or a seat on an executive committee, or holding 2 committee seats on 2 different committees, 2 different ex officio positions, or 1 of each. I know that's a lot, but think of it as like a 2-point system. You have to be fulfilling 2 points to fill your seat as a senator. Consistent attendance is also expected. However, this is a university. You're all students that are literally building your futures. If you can't make it, literally just send me an email. If you need any kind of assistance or support, there isn't a conversation that I'm afraid to have with you. We're here to support you guys. Yeah, so please contact me if you're unable to attend. If you can't seem to fulfill those requirements, we have a vice president of student leadership whose job is to help you fix that. This is also going to be the last week before I begin enforcing a business casual dress code. However, you're all still students. Some of us have to work, some, as Keegan said, some of us have very unique and very strict schedules. That's another thing of just come have a conversation and we'll facilitate it. There's still a lot of representative and community association materials in mine and Keegan's office. It is amazing stuff, and I think that if your clubs and organizations have historians of some kind, I feel like it's material that they would love to at least have a look at, because it's got to go somewhere eventually. We're all making great progress on building up to facilitating Senate elections, which the FEPC can elaborate on more. We had a meeting with Sean, our attorney, the FEPC chair, and the DPSL and I regarding the elections and potentially allocating Senate seats and the history of doing so. It's looking very optimal for the Senate, especially how many student leaders we have in this room, to really start operating under the governing docs. As flawed as they are, it's time that we stop operating under this de facto rebuilding phase that we've been in for the past 4 years and really start ironing down. Working under these guidelines, because that's the only way we're going to find what's wrong with them to fix them for the future. There's plenty of stuff we can iron out, which I'm going to continue working on with President Tripp. I will say, I'll let the FEPC chair elaborate on this further, but senators who would like to hold chairships, well, within the Senate for next calendar year, it would be a great time to start thinking about filling out your nomination papers, because that's another part of the procedure that we're going to go back to of pretty much you get nominated by your student body, and as long, say 7 people get enough signatures to be CLAS senators by the deadline that the FEPC chair comes up with, and there's still a seat, you win the election, you get your 7 seats. If 4 people want to be MBS senators, that's when we'll facilitate an election, which that's something that I'd love to have a meeting with our advisor Lori about, is facilitating how specific colleges can get their ballots while also still facilitating an at-large election if necessary. As for my goals as your vice president, it's to maintain the efficiency and effectiveness of the undergraduate student senate and to help ensure that it is representing its constituency with the utmost integrity, professionalism, and heart. I can do this in different ways by ironing out governing docs, by chairing a professional and passionate senate, which I really have faith in all of you that we will go above and beyond that this year. Yeah, using the years of insight and perspective I have earned with my time as a senator, I hope to lead student government better than I have found it, and to help create a perpetual growth environment that is best for everyone that leads the student activity. Thank you. Now for the Vice President of Financial Affairs.
Hi, hello everyone. So this week has been a pretty interesting week as I've met a lot of new faces. So I've had a few meetings with Sean that's in the rec center now, about the policies around sports clubs and some of that stuff, as well as I've been bothering a lot of the directors of different colleges to start getting their funding forms and the contact information that we need for one of my goals that you'll hear about later. So yeah, it's been a week of new people. As for my goals, the first goal, which this is gonna kind of piggyback off of some of President Tripp's stuff, is to create an alumni-fed kind of savings pool for us. That will be an emergency reserve that will be able to help us in times like we are right now. So if this ever happens in the future, we'll have a little something to fall back on. As well as revising the financial policies, because as well as all of the documents for UMSG, everything needs a little, there needs to be some edits. And as well with that, there's gonna be some new policies about how to estimate the unallocated for the following years. It's the same thing to help protect kind of the situation we're in right now. As well as policies to protect that emergency fund that hopefully I'll be working on. One of the other goals is the goal I'm currently working on, which is to gather the funding requests and the funding information from all of the different colleges to try to centralize a lot of the different funding sources that we can turn organizations to. And then lastly, this depends a little bit on the financial situation that we see probably next semester. But looking into the sports club requirements for the tier funding system to see what would be a fair allocation, since they've got increased capacity. And we should probably look at increasing the requirements for said tier funding. Yeah. That's it for my goals. Now, as for the normal BPFA report, our starting unallocated is $71,970.52. We did have EDC, so there is other stuff. We have one office budget for Pre-Law Society at $200. There is one event being booked, which is the Physical Educational Student Association. And there was tabled at $2,739. We're just waiting for some clarifying information on that. And then for our consent agenda, for the Society of Women Engineers, we had 390. For Building Key National Honor Society, $240. Pre-Law Society, $300. Hillel, $50, and then the Pickleball Club, $1,000.
Thank you. Now for the Vice President of Student Organization.
Hi guys, I've been meeting with Colleen from CSI to compare our records and assess which clubs have CSI university affiliation, but not student government recognition. This is going to be a big thing for us moving forward. As we unify our processes, we're going to move towards a status quo where every undergraduate club has both CSI affiliation and at bare minimum UMSG recognition or preliminary recognition, sorry. And this is going to be a hard requirement. So it's basically going to mean that this body and SOC, but basically the GSS, are going to be the arbiters of what undergraduate clubs are clubs on campus, which I think is a good thing. Because if we don't recognize a club, then CSI is not going to recognize the club either, and vice versa. So yeah, it's going to be up to each individual club as to whether or not they're going to pursue final recognition and go through that whole process, but that's up to them. Also, there are currently a lot of clubs that have CSI affiliation but no recognition with us. So I'm creating a new form on campus groups that I'm going to push to them individually with the goal of getting them preliminary recognition by the end of the semester. As such, both SOC and the Senate are going to be very busy with clubs this semester, as each of these clubs will have to come through both of those bodies. I'm also working on updating our SORP. It's a little out of date now that our processes have changed. The most immediately forthcoming resolution is going to be about update forms. I'm going to look or work with Paula to draft a resolution that changes the requirements on those. Feel free to ask me if you have any questions on that. Goals for the year. A big thing for me is I want to collaborate with CSI to create more resources for the recognition process. It's a little bit confusing as it's different than it used to be. So that's going to be big, like instructional videos and stuff. Also, I want to create a more sustainable program for VPSOs to monitor clubs that we can pass on to future VPSOs. I want to engage clubs more throughout the year and preempt problems, especially through club visits. I also want, like I said, get all clubs preliminary recognition at minimum by the end of the semester. And also, I really want to exercise an appropriate amount of scrutiny in regard to club recognition to ensure that nothing falls through the cracks, and also to make sure that our resources aren't being taken advantage of. This is going to be a big thing for me this year in particular, as we've stated ad nauseum, our budget's pretty tight, so we don't want anyone taking money that they shouldn't be allowed to have. But to this end, also, I want to support club fundraising activities as much as I can, because, like I said, money's tight. Sorry, that's a lot. That's all I have for this report.
Now for the Vice President of Student Entertainment.
Hello, everyone. Firstly, I want to thank you guys for the discussion last week. Even though it was late and we're all tired, you guys provided some great feedback and great food for thought. So thank you for that. Yesterday, we announced our show, and in case you didn't hear, we're getting Trevor Wallace to the CCA November 7th at 8 p.m. Get your tickets through campus groups. As of this morning, there was at 10:30, There's 150 people registered and the number kept climbing throughout the day, so we're looking for another successful show. All in all, things are on track with the show, which is great news. Yesterday we had an SEC meeting that consisted of more than just me and the AVPSE, so that was very exciting. We discussed potential music genres and or artists for a spring show, so if you guys are interested in that, email me or show up to SEC Mondays 1 to 2 in my office. Like the other execs, I was asked to bring some goals, so here are my goals. I've mentioned it in reports so far, but my first goal is to build up an SEC. I think an SEC that has non-UMSG students on it, crucial to the vitality of student entertainment. We are in a time where the cost of things are continuing to rise and where the money keeps getting tighter. So students must have a platform to advocate for what they want to see from student entertainment. My plan to increase SEC's presence is simply tabling and talking about it more. Yesterday when we tabled for the show, I also had out a notepad for people to write down their emails to be in the loop on student entertainment, and that's just the goal in general, it's just to talk about it as much with people when we are doing these events and letting them know that student entertainment committee is the one that does these events, and that if they want to say in that, please get involved in that. The next goal is to just try to make things more efficient. There are a lot of things within student entertainment that are old and outdated. Like last year when we were doing the shows, somebody had to like physically go in and like confirm the undergrad status of all the like 800, no, it was like 900 people. Somebody had to like spend like an entire weekend confirming that status. I didn't want to do that to someone again this year. So we're using campus groups and looking to use other platforms, but mainly campus groups as ways to make the student entertainment division more efficient. And my last one is to just be more open and listening to students and you guys as much as possible. In the past, I feel like BPSEs have swept things under the table and waited last minute to talk about things, and I want to avoid that by being as open and honest with you. So please show up to my office hours or just shoot me an email and I will listen to you guys and perform.
Now for the Vice President of Student Leadership.
Hi, everyone. I've been working through all the new summer onboardings this week and a little bit into next week, most likely. Speaking of which, if you were just appointed, you should expect an email from me soon about scheduling an onboard meeting. And if we haven't scheduled one yet, I'll probably be opening up to you again about getting one scheduled. You'll get your bindings at the onboarding meeting, so if you don't have yours yet, that's why. I'll be tabling at the open house for prospective students on Saturday morning. So if any of you are interested in helping me table, it's early, so probably not gonna want to, but it would be nice to have some help. If you don't mind, please reach out to me. And I can give you more details on that. SLC does not have a meeting time yet. I'll talk more about that when I get to my goals. And the scholarship applications are now active until October 11th, so tell all your friends, make sure they apply. I'm working with DOC to get some Instagram posts out on that, as well as making sure to send the newsletters and other information things that go out. As for my goals this year, I'd love to see a full Senate because we're nearing pretty close and it's just the start of the year, so I think it's something we can get done. I'm working on kind of targeting some of the less active colleges, so that'd be like education years, so hopefully we can get those seats filled. I would like to have more leadership applications than they had last year, which was 106, so we'll see if we can get there by October 11th. And then I'm also hoping to have a student leadership committee that functions as it was meant to. And so this committee was meant as sort of, I guess I'm gonna bounce off what President Tripp said earlier, the connective tissue idea between projects that senators would like to get done while they're on Senate and like sort of admin and those different contact points for how to get their projects through. And so my job is to kind of function as that connective tissue, and so that's why we have committees to help those meetings and to facilitate conversations so that execs know what is going on and that senators have resources available to them. if you'd like to be part of that committee, please email me so we can establish a time that works for us. So if you have any projects in mind, bring them with you. And then I'd also like to make some progress on the garden space project. What that will look like with what we've heard about the re-envision bid, I'm not sure, but I'm hoping to get some more information by the end of next week on that. And then report.
Advisor to student government.
Hi, everyone. Just wanted to remind everyone that this weekend is Family and Friends Weekend. Even if you do not have family or friends coming, there's going to be about an extra 3,000 people or so on campus. But that also means there's all sorts of like free swag, food, etc., and entertainment on the mall all day Saturdays. If you want to breeze through, it might be fun. Woodsman's team is doing a big demonstration thing that looks really cool. So, and then there are a bunch of other clubs that are doing things also. So it might be fun if it's a nice day to just, football games, walk around. Whatever. And then the other thing is, I think I mentioned this last time I was here, but I just want to remind you, there's only a couple weeks left to register to vote if you have moved in the past year. So that might be something that you want to do. You can swing by CSI or you can do it online. But registering to vote in the town that you live in will allow you, if you live in Orono, to vote on campus on election day, or to vote on campus on the early election day, which is October 30th. Okay.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the speakers? BPSE Lehman.
I forgot to include this in my report, but on Family and Friends Weekend, or Saturday from 10 to 3, we will be hosting big giant inflatable ball things. So if you can volunteer at any point during that, please see me after this and do that.
Awesome. I also forgot something in my report. I meant to bring one with me to show off my crowning achievement of the past week. These committees of the Senate will now have binders where they can keep their minutes, their attendance. That one's the super important part. Any notes that they have. I think that's going to be a part of how it's a scary word, but enforce obligations for senators. I'm still trying to figure out where we're going to keep these, where they can still be accessed as like open record, but where I can still check on them like maybe once a week just to make sure everybody's doing okay. They look amazing. So thank you very much to Jeff for ordering those. Are there any questions for the speakers, President Tripp?
I also forgot two things. Number one, Cabinet is having its first official meeting tomorrow at 11. Cabinet is meeting from 11 to 11:30s. 11:30s in the student government chambers, which is down near the offices, but it'll also be Zoom accessible. So hopefully we can get everybody there. And if you are unable to make that, let me know. I've already touched base with a few of you, but we'll figure something else out, whether that's a proxy or some different sort of vote, but that is required for all execs and reps. And the other thing is that I'm also starting conversations with the president's office about my town hall series, and hopefully we can have some direct town halls, as we've kind of already discussed. We need between students and administrators, and that's it.
Hey, are there any other questions for the speakers? Senator Fine.
Question for BPSE Lehman. At 10:30, whenever you checked, how many tickets were left and how many total are there? There is 800 total, and if I can do some math correctly, that would be 650 left. Cool, thank you.
Any other questions for the speakers? Seeing none, we will move on to periodic reports, starting with the faculty senate student representative.
There was not a Senate meeting last Friday, so I do not have one, but there is one this Friday, and so I will have one next week.
University of Maine Board of Trustees student representative.
Hi, everyone. I did my notes for the board meeting. Those are uploaded to my drive. For those of you who don't know, on the UMSG website, you can, I think it's under files. There's a Google Drive where I put all of the notes from the board meetings and committee meetings that I go to. So you can, and they're on like in your Google Docs that you can access and read. And then I do some highlights that I think people will be interested in. So from this last board meeting, there was more money allocated to our Sustainable Agriculture Workforce and Innovation Center. There was like 9 million allocated and now there's 11 million. From the President's Roundtable, Maine law has the largest 1L class in 20 years, which is 20% people who were first generation college students and 63% women. Just kind of cool for people who know Paige Allen is there, being paid. Maine retention from first to second year is up 7%. UMaine Augusta has a similar housing situation to ours and has 27 students living at the nearby Best Western. So, yeah. A flight education partner has 4 additional planes that UMA students can now use in their flight technology program, which is cool. The USM president is commissioning an alma mater song. Anyways, those are my highlights. I am also working to schedule the first meeting with Kelly Sparks and President Tripp and EPFA law. And we're in touch with first secretary, so that's all happening. And then my goals are to clarify and document the responsibilities for my position for the next BOT rep. To work with other BOT reps to make space for student voices in committee meetings aside from AFA. That's the only place that we actually speak to the board right now. To create lines of communication with board members, which it wasn't a goal last year, but I ended up doing some of that and it felt helpful, so I want to do more of that. And then sort of bridge the gap between UMSG's guidelines for the position and the board's guidelines for my position. And the report.
Chair of the Fair Election Practices Commission.
Okay, hi everyone. I'm gonna start off with my goals and then I'll go into my report. So, obviously, one of my main goals is to have a fair and super successful election, both executive and Senate. Specifically for the elections, I want to get a higher percentage of in-person voters because I think that's kind of fun and well, I kind of want to make it fun. Last year we only had one, and I think it was Senator Buzzell, if I remember correctly. And so we can only go up. But you know. So I've also been tinkering with the idea of a crisis plan. It's not that scary. It's just kind of what happens if there is an investigation into the election. Going through the guidelines, it just kind of mentions that investigations happen and that I have to run them. And so I'm kind of figuring out what that would mean, and hopefully someone else won't have to figure that out in the future. I'm also piggybacking, I'm copying the emails, and I'm working on like getting some things I wish I knew before stepping into this position. So that would be the ground running next year when everybody steps into their new positions. I'm also hoping to work with DOT Mills and DOC Downer to get information super available and accessible on our Instagram, I go first, and then also our website for any deadlines about nominations and such for the election, because I don't want anyone saying they didn't know. I want them everywhere. Another goal of mine is to get a committee functioning. It's currently only me, and so I really need people. I think that everyone at this university is passionate about being a student here and having our voices heard. And we have all heard criticisms about our institution and what we are doing here in student government. And so I think if people are passionate enough to be speaking about us, they should come to us directly. And we welcome any feedback, even criticism. So if you have friends that are like, what's going on? send them here. We would love to speak to anyone about anything, I can guarantee that. And so into my normal report. Oh, another goal is tackling the FEPC guidelines, because they're a mess. Everyone's commented on our documents, it's just kind of like grammar and stuff. There's too many spaces in some places and not enough in others, and so it's just those kind of things. And so onto my usual report, I met with Vice President Peterson, VPSL Oldfield, and our attorney Sean O'Mara this week to get some clarification on the Senate elections, because they've never happened, and so we're kind of figuring it out. I was originally planning to present the Senate election timeline tonight, but it doesn't appear I am. So I'm gonna give you a little sneak peek, and then we will talk and vote on it next week. So our deadline, tentatively, before you vote on it, anything, for nominations to be in, is going to be October 11th. That's a Friday. We've had plenty of time to fill out our packets. If you filled out nomination packets or senator application packets, your nomination is in. So you don't really need to worry about that. Also, time to rescind your nominations is going to be the 23rd of October. That's right before we're gonna have our voting day. Probably won't see a ton because we've had such an influx of new senators, but you never know. So after nomination deadline on the 11th, you can campaign for 2 weeks, and then we'll do our voting day, the 28th, I believe. Yes, the 28th is a Monday, around like a normal election 9 to 5. And then later that week, the next day, hopefully we'll have like the counting and publication of our results, or a runoff vote later. So that's it for the election, and I'm just kind of tinkering on things. I'm going to bug all of you soon to get bios and pictures for the ballots. So please respond. Please. And report.
Student legal representative.
Hi, yeah, I have a short report. So earlier today, I met with our attorney, Sean O'Mara, and we discussed some goals for the year. Most importantly, we want to work on building a relationship between students and student legal services, and making undergrads aware that they do have access to free legal advice and potential representation if it was decided that they needed it. And then Sean is also working up setting up a presentation about student legal services, and usually covers one or more areas of the law, depending on what students say that they're interested or would like to learn more about. Last semester, he did one on landlord tenant law, and he had like some cookies and snacks there for students. And then in previous years, he's also done like lunch and coffee hours. So we are looking for suggestions about a theme, a date, a time, a topic or area of law for this semester's presentation. And then he's also published his reports on the Student Legal Services website under the monthly client usage by topic for the fall semester, fall 2023 semester. And then he's working on spring of 2024 and then this summer's report. And so if you have any questions, please feel free to email me and or Sean. And a report.
Representative to the Graduate Student Senate.
All right, thank you, everyone. So graduate student government did not have a meeting last week, but they had a they had a meeting on September 13th. I was not present at the time, so the chair, but I reached out to the president of GSG, Laura Curioli. So essentially, they had a meeting on the 13th.
And it just comes as a little bit of an update, as President had said that GSC meets bi-weekly, so bi-weekly as well as like with the executive session, so it's essentially like 1 week they have GSG, the other one they have just executive session. Pending if I'm gonna be having to go to that, but I'll have to like reconfirm on that end. And GSG, like the Senate GSG is from 3 to 4 on Fridays, and executive meetings meet from 4 to 5 on Fridays. Within the meeting minutes that I've gotten from her, there's gonna be some changes that are coming in. Some including like the possibility of amending the constitution to include 2 senators from each departments, just reflecting just like city population changes, so there's like more representation. Adjustments in committee, and also this relation again with population, and also just related to GSC itself. Much of the rest of the agenda that the episode covered was connecting between students, like those bridging gaps and divide in communication, fixing website issues. Essentially, they you probably might have noticed about like if you looked at the GSU website, they have not updated it, and that's because they have been having some issues on it. And he didn't give me a timeline on when that's gonna happen, but it should be happening soon. They're also getting a solid base on student activity fees and getting grants. Student activity fee, I have to like get some more clarification on, because as far as I know, there was like some differences on what that actually it means for student activity fees, so more on that soon. And the last thing is updates in relation to the UMaine grad unit, the UMaine grad union in our bargaining, as they are having meetings to discuss what they're going to be doing in terms of like collective bargaining next week. As a little like aside for like my actual report, I'm hoping at least part of my position, I'm gonna try, you know, because of this whole bi-weekly thing, and if I'm not able to meet in executive session, I'm hoping to have like a sort of like bi-weekly like meeting with the executive team, and like, you know, like to see like new information and see what they're working on. And the other thing is that I would like to have like a connection with the UMaine Grad Student Union, just to like possibly, you know, like just get like updates, because of course, grad student workers impact our lives, you know, whether they're grading or they're teachers, TAs, whatever. I feel like it's really important, given the fact that, you know, they work and live on campus, or at least our relation to, you know, our academic lives. So those are like, you know, little things I wanted to do with this position. So, end of report. Corner Town Council liaison.
This week's meeting was very brief. Some of the key takeaways was that COP was granted a liquor license. The town accepted a bid from Hughes Brothers Inc. Camden for $208,000 for the Colburn Drive sidewalk lighting project. This project would replace and expand the lights on Colburn Drive. And this is a part of this is a goal of making the area more pedestrian friendly. And on September 30th, there will be a workshop dedicated to the Route 2 corridor project, which aims to fix the issues of like how downtown is very unfriendly to pedestrians. And I will try to attend and report.
Old Town City Council.
No report.
Well, thank you. Representative of Military and Veteran Student Affairs.
Hello, everyone. Yesterday, I met with sophomore NRTC cadet Nick Fichard to ask him about his program. For his mechanical engineering technician degree, he'll have to be 5 years on campus before 5 years mandatory service. Then he hopes to work as a service warfare officer. Unfortunately, at a CNO meeting 2 weeks ago, this semester, he was told by a lieutenant that the U.S. is prepared to do tentatively in 2027. And so that would be his senior year, and it's cut short, and he would not be able to complete his degree until after his service. And that's something that all of his classmates are kind of worried about, not being able to complete their degree. He elaborated that events with NRTC is holding this year is Dining Out, which is held twice a year, and that's only for NRT students. As well as the Navy Ball coming this October. There's a Monster Warrior next weekend, which is an event for suicide awareness, and he noted that these events, cadets are not allowed to ask for donations for the charities because they're in uniform. But he was trying to find a loophole for that. I think that's something I can help with his administration. NRTC helped last semester with the veteran bar renovations at VFA last semester, and so there's a large interest in more volunteering opportunities for them on campus, which is one of the things I plan to really broaden for them for both NRTC and RTC. So hopefully I can coordinate with your offices soon and report.
Thank you. Director of Communications.
All right, so this week I finished the Rosa for the Fall show and announced on the Instagram. I also worked on and posted something about the student leadership award that was mentioned. I edited and posted a Senate meeting from last week, which one of my goals is to post Senate meetings before Senate the next week. It just was like slower this week, but I want to have them uploaded by like Wednesday or Thursday at the latest. And also I did take headshots today, but if anyone didn't get one and they still want one, just please reach out to me. Because I'm happy to figure something out. And then for my goals this year, I want to try to post 1 to 2 times on the Instagram. I want to work with the VPSO to do some club spotlights, and then, like I said, post the Senate meetings Wednesday, Thursday at the latest each week. So yeah, end of report.
Director of Technology.
Howdy, y'all. So piggybacking off the YouTube thing, we had streamline issues with downloading it, so that one's totally on me. However, moving past that, a couple of things since the last meeting. Committee chairs, I'm sure they've noticed a lovely GCal invitation. As soon as you find committee times and place, please put it in the calendar. Last year was a bit difficult with getting the calendar sorted, so I'm hoping this year things will be a bit smoother with getting that all put together. Let's see, it'll make it easier for anyone to come by your committee meetings, whether it's a concerned student with problems or someone from the main campus with questions. Anyone will be able to attend your committee meetings, so that would be good. Some of my goals for this year will be revamping remaining pages, specifically the General Student Senate page. Shout out to Senator Waters for sending me some inspiration, some ideas. As well as committee pages. And the goal is to get more students engaged with committee meetings and even join. I'm going to be focused on those 2 things specifically. But this does require your participation with initiatives such as putting your meeting times into the GCal. As well as spreading stuff like we have a report problem form, which shout out to VPSL, Oldfield, put it in her newsletter. We have a couple submissions now and I forward those to the associate committees, so that's good. Other than that, go quickly, improve student participation engagement with the Zoom to YouTube live streaming. Already spoke about the committee thing, improve file organization and storage with a nice large UMSG drive across all positions. Speaking of which, get position specific emails. So that way we no longer have to keep updating it with personal emails. We'll just have umsg.dot or VP president. As well as I want to share the accomplishments of the Senate body. And so I'll be working on a page to be able to list all the resolutions that we passed. Put the documents up there, if we compose them, all that information. So you can go back end a year and be like, what a great time that was. So yeah, needless to say, there's a lot I'd like to accomplish before graduating in the spring. I want to hand my successor a website that they'll be proud to manage and turn it into a go-to resource for students to report problems, as well as get involved and make a difference. And report.
University and Insecurity Representative.
No report.
Center for the Undergraduate Research Liaison. No report. Are there any questions for the speakers? Please keep them relevant to these positions and keep them limited. Senator Richard.
Question about that chair of the General Election Access Commission. Has there been any communication or messaging to the general student body indicating that they should expect a general student who they should be ready to vote?
No. So I have been waiting to get some dates voted on and cleared by you guys first, because I want to make sure the dates of any deadlines don't overlap with unknown by me holidays or breaks. That would be icky during that. I'm hoping to get things posted within the week on the Instagram. Like a story, just being like, hey, did you know? And I'm also hoping to talk with DOT Mills to get it on the website where it says join as a senator. I'm hoping that there can be a little caveat in that, saying it's not just handing in your application packet. But Jeff is very aware that there is the possibility of elections, and so when people are coming in interested to be a senator, they are being briefed on not the possibility, but the subject, and especially on certain colleges where those elections will be held. But with the general student body, no, I do not have contact with them currently.
Are there any other questions for the speaker, Senator Sparks?
I also have a question about the Senate. A lot of us just filled out the nomination paperwork. Do we need to do that again?
No, so that paperwork is your nomination. I have that date to rescind your nomination in for any of you that may just be like, oh, I joined for a few weeks. I don't want to be on the ballot, costing someone else's spot possibly. And so no, you will not have to do it again. And also for seniors, it is from January to December. It's the 25 calendar year. But if you're a senior, your spot will go vacant once you graduate anyway. So you should still run if you're interested in being a senator in the spring term.
Point of information about that, just to clarify, if you are sitting in a Senate seat right now, consider yourself nominated for this election, correct? Again, just to reiterate, first time around, I think that to Senator Ricker's point about getting the word out, as soon as these things are solidified, it'll be our #1 priority. It'll be everywhere, as much as we can do so. We have the ability to send out emails to the whole student body as well. So I'm not concerned about there being ample time for students to know about this election. But really the group that needs to be aware of it is you guys right now seeking those seats.
Are there any other questions for the speaker, Senator Fang?
Question for Senator Martel. I apologize, this is a general question. Do you have any information on construction they're doing outside Altown on that road?
No. Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions for the speakers? Seeing none, we will move on to the reports of standing committees, starting with marketing and public relations. Membership.
Yeah, so just kind of getting my footing here, and hopefully you like the nominals tonight. That was a new thing. Thank you to Nate for helping me out with that, Senator Fang. Yeah, I can't promise that everything's gonna be a smash hit, but I can promise I'm gonna try, so end of report.
Thank you. Policy and procedure.
No report.
Political activists.
If you'd like to be part of this committee, email me or talk to me. We can set up a time. That's it.
Services.
Services Committee will be meeting Friday at 1 o'clock. I encourage all of you to join because services is a super broad umbrella, auxiliary services. So it works best when you can get a big group of people together and, discuss ideas, kind of throwing a dartboard kind of thing. And report.
Academic affairs.
Quick report, I'm working on connecting with the Associate Provost Scott Mazzilli so I can start acting in the liaison part of my role. As for the committee chair part of my role, Academic Affairs Committee will meet 10:30 to 11:30, give or take, the end part, on Fridays in the Senate chambers. If you don't know where this is, email me. If you want to join and haven't reached out to me yet, email me. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions to the speakers? Seeing none, we'll move on to reports of special committees, undergraduate student symposium committee.
Trying to work with Cougar right now and get an email list for possible general undergraduate student body members that would like to join the committee and be involved in it. Also, if anybody here is interested, just talk to me during the recess or after the meeting and I'll get your name down for trying to figure out when to set the meeting time for and a report.
Food and dining affairs.
Okay, this is an annoyingly long report for a week that I feel like I did nothing. Hi guys, I had a great first FDA meeting in my dorm alone where I sent emails to all of the Sodexo heads letting them know that I'll continue to be the one bothering them this semester. Questions I asked them about are food options and hours for wells. What are the biggest issues they're currently facing, and if they have a response to the cleanliness issues in York and Hilltop. If you would like to join one of these meetings, probably not in my dorm, probably in the union, please find me and let me know. I could really use committee members. Probably drop a message in the Senate space for people to reply, just react to. Please join my committee. There's no set time because no one's in my committee right now. I'm working on hopefully tabling the union either this week or next week. I have to talk to President Tripp or Peterson about how to set that up. I also would like to work on a survey because Oldfield will probably bother you about that. And I'm hoping to get that out with the next week's VPSL email. DOT Mills let me know that I had the fantastic privilege of being the first to receive a UMSG report of problem solution. But in all cases, other students have also taken the initiative to start petitions or surveys about the dining situation on campus. I'm working on reaching out to these students to either have them join my committee or see if we can provide support from UMSG in some way. Also, sorry, Jeff, I didn't include this in my report. I just found out the VP of the Amazon division, whatever that means, will be at Wells tomorrow from 3 to 4 p.m. So super exciting. Can't wait to meet the VP of the Amazon division. End of report. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the speakers relevant to their office? Seeing none, we'll move on to representative board reports. I'm so sorry, who had their hand raised? FEPC chair.
What is the cleanliness issue in the dining halls?
As far as I'm aware, people are just pretty vocal on social media about seeing bugs or just unclean tables around the dining areas.
Are there any other questions for the speaker? Senator Martin?
Sorry, this is a question for Senator Maine. Can you elaborate on what the Amazon VP is?
To the best of my knowledge, Wells Just Walk Out uses the same technology as Amazon Go stores, where there's like 300 cameras and they just take a million pictures of what you grab and put down and charge you like 3 hours later. So I guess whoever's in charge of that tech for Sodexo will be here tomorrow.
Okay, thank you.
I guess I'll meet him probably.
Thank you. Are there any other questions for the speakers? Seeing none, we'll move on to representative board reports, starting with CAMS. Go ahead.
CANS held its first meeting of the semester and its first event. Additionally, it found an individual to take over the CANS representative position. Unfortunately, our second meeting with CNTSP was canceled due to personal matters. However, we will have our second CANS meeting this Wednesday with likely higher attendance. All right, and then these are numbered. 1, CAN's first fall semester meeting had low attendance. However, many communicated that they were unable to stop by due to schedule conflicts. 2, Tasty Treat Tuesday. It had a large turnout and was super successful. We will likely repeat this event monthly. And 3, CAN's representative appointed a representative who will likely take over the position in the coming week. End of report.
Thank you. Honors College.
Okay, hello. Apologize, I am getting over illness, so bear with me. My brain is very foggy and I cannot find literally anything that I'm trying to look for. I had a meeting today with Dr. Ellen Weinauer, who is the dean of the Honors College. This was planned and then it happened after I submitted my report. So apologies to Jeff and anybody else in the vicinity. We are trying to find an advisor. We still cannot. We believe it's going to be the honors ambassadors and advisor, Sarah Nietzsche. And we are working on that. The big point of meeting with Dr. Weinauer was talking about re-upping the Honors Council, which is something that formerly existed in the Honors College and no longer exists. It had about 80 people and SAB was formerly involved on it. We also talked about an Honors Curriculum Council, which formerly existed, but we also have a high likelihood of coming back. We're also discussing the restructuring going on in the Honors College and how Dr. Weinauer over the next couple of years plans on restructuring and dividing student groups and student leadership in the Honors College, which will hopefully include SAB. They're not sure yet
which is fun. But other than that, we planned a pumpkin painting event with them, which is in my actual report, last Thursday was SAB's second meeting. We discussed preliminary work on the It's Personal campaign. For those who don't know, the It's Personal campaign is an annual personal care items drive that SAB sets up across campus. We get departments, organizations, and athletics involved in donating, and what's all collected, we give to the BBE, the Partner Exchange, which is a food and goods pantry on campus run by Lisa Moran. We plan on doing the event with an event separately with Lisa to do educational personal care items. And we also hope to talk to DEI and the IFRC to do a joint event about feminine care products, because that is also part of personal care. We also had our first Maine Day meal pack out meeting. We are hitting the ground running, trying to set a goal for meals. We're waiting on getting the actual amount for the meals, how much they cost. Last year, they were 36 cents, but they're going up because food goes up every year because of inflation, which is great, not great. But we're shooting for at least 50,000 meals, and that's the minimum. We had 57,000 last year, and I'm hoping to do more if possible. I don't know that. We're also getting started on donations and fundraising work and asking different departments across the University of Maine sphere, and specifically the University of Maine systems of student life, the president's office, et cetera. And that's just the early work and the report.
I have the reports for IFC and Handheld. Tonight, in collaboration with each other, they're holding Narcan training for all of Greek life. In addition to this, each chapter will be distributed Narcan to use in emergencies only. In place of meetings this week, they're hosting a hazing prevention dive tournament on the mall. Again, okay, with 10 teams from each chapter participating, the winning team will get to donate $500 to the charity or foundation of their choosing. And the reports, senior class council.
Hello, I'm Zach. I'm new here, so I did not submit a report, which I apologize. That will be different next time. We held our first meeting for the senior class council last Wednesday and started discussing fundraising opportunities and plans for the year so that we can hold some events towards the end of the year for the class of 2025. Our next meeting will be tomorrow, Wednesday, at 7 p.m. in the Buchanan Alumni House. If you're interested, feel free to send myself or Izzy Kostelnik an email, and we'll get you more details on that.
And a report. Is that the report? Student Athletic Advisory Council.
No.
Are there any questions for the speakers relevant to their offices? Seeing none, we'll move on to, I'm so sorry. Your hand is up first, right?
Yeah.
Senator Cowan.
This is a question for the honors, or sorry, more of like a comment for the Honors College Student Activity Board. The IFRC is not its own department. It's part of the Office for Diversity and Inclusion. I can give you the contact information to the director, or you can reach out to me personally. I also work there, and I can help set up any collaboration events for that.
President Drew.
Point of information, our DOC, we didn't actually talk about this, is also sitting on an IMRC student outreach committee.
Student
Advisory committee, so plenty of touch points for IMRC if you need it.
Are there any other questions for the speakers? Representative Levesque.
In response to President Crick, I was talking about the IFRC, the Intersectional Feminist Resource Center, not the IMRC.
That would make more sense because I didn't understand how they played into this conversation, so thank you. Yeah.
Are there any other questions for the speakers? Seeing none, we'll move on to the Community Association report, starting with Shaq.
No report.
Feminist Collective, none. Wildstein.
A bit of business that I finished up from last semester. We had never totally solidified on just one date for the drag show with the CCA, and I got that figured out. So now we have a date on hold with the CCA for that. Which I guess it's not really a secret. It's April 5th. It's way in advance, but April 5th, 2025. And a report.
International Student Association.
Hello, everyone. The Lost Copy Hour was a success. We celebrate Joe's birthday with cake and ice cream and coffee, which was a wonderful time for everyone going. This week, we have something fun planned for coffee hour. We'll have pizza and we're gonna play human bingo, which is a great way for international students to meet each other and make new connections. Last Saturday, we had our ISET retreat. We discussed our main goals and planned some big economic events. In addition to Culture Fest and International Dance Festival, we're excited to try to bring back our local dance party, which used to be a thing 9 years ago. It's very popular and it featured international music and dancing, and we can't wait to try to revive it. And I think ISET is more like a community and not just for international students, but also for everyone who wants to learn about the cultures and countries in general. And we're also planning to be more active on Instagram. We want to be recognized more by American students as well. Because I think that ISET is a good opportunity for other students to travel without going anywhere. And we're excited that any ISET member can join our meetings as well, just to help us with planning and work closer together. And that's what I hope to see someone the way. With coffee hour today, Friday the 14th and 12th in the evening.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the speakers? Seeing none, if it's the pleasure of the Senate, we will move into our 5-minute recess.
So I have a version of that.
We will now reconvene from our 5-minute recess, and before we move on to the consent agenda, we have an update from the Vice President of Financial Affairs.
Okay, hi everyone, just want to let you know there was a slight mistype for those of you who only have the agenda. The Society of Women Engineers, that is the unamended item. They're down at $390, which is the correct amount, which brings the total for the consent agenda to $2,180.
Thank you. I am now looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda. Senator Ricker.
I make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
If that's the pleasure of the Senate, that's adopted. No unfinished business, new business. I'm looking for
a motion from a senator,
Senator Long.
I move to suspend the rules and add a 15-minute discussion under new business for President Tripp's topic.
Is there a second?
Second.
If that's the pleasure of the Senate, that's adopted. Yeah, is there any discussion on the motion? Any debate? All those in favor of the 15-minute discussion? For Senator, you gotta vote. Those opposed? All those abstaining? All right, that's the majority, so that's adopted. We will now adopt a 15-minute discussion with President Schick.
I really shouldn't be that. Okay, time it, sure. Let's see how fast we can get through this. Okay, guys, so as you know or may not know, depending on how new you are to this organization, the University of Maine Student Government does a yearly survey to the entire student body. If you were here last year, you remember I was kind of the one that headed that going into sending it out last year. I would like to point out just a little bit of an update. I'm still waiting on 2 of the gift carders to come get it, but our $100 winner came and got his. So what we're going to be doing now, hopefully you guys have already kind of peered through it because I don't intend for this to be a very in-depth discussion. I'll explain kind of my plans for how we're going to utilize this survey later. But there are some things I want to touch on. So if we could present it to the screen, we're going to scroll down through it together, and I have a document that I've marked up. And the way that I foresee this kind of being is just to start conversations. This is a pretty important report. I don't think we've ever gone through it together as a Senate, but this is the direct feedback from our student body about our organization. I want you guys to look at this kind of twofold. Number one, this is something that is supposed to help us do better as student representatives of our constituency here on campus. But it's also, I'm open to ideas of how to make this survey better because it does not reach as many students as I would like it to. But we'll get there in a second. So pretty straightforward background, pretty much copied and pasted it from last year's, but added a few more information, updated it. So in the past, it's been essentially one of the executives who have headed this and kind of put it together with the help of the exec team to do division-specific questions. Last year, for instance, I sent a email to the student entertainment division and said, "Hey guys, we're doing a survey. What do you think you should know going into next year? What do you want to know?" So think of it kind of in that regard. This is the second time we've done this, so it is still relatively new and a relatively new format. So again, I'm so open to concepts and ideas of how we can improve this, but that is going to be a next semester thing. I'll get into that later. But for now, let's start kind of scrolling through this. So first, the first section is survey demographics. If you want to move on to that, pretty self-explanatory. We had only a plus 1.27% survey response rate from last year, which isn't great, but it's still an improvement. And like we said earlier, even though it's not true, we only have up to go. And I think that we have a very motivated and kind of a community that's building that seems excited. So hopefully we'll see that kind of improve as we go. Just some interesting stuff I saw. I expected there to be kind of a disparity between freshmen and the other grades. We've seen in the past that freshmen are usually the most engaged on campus because they're the ones living on campus, they're the freshest to campus, and a lot of times as people kind of solidify themselves onto clubs and orgs and this stuff as they go kind of older, they get less involved, but that wasn't true. We have a pretty interesting kind of breakdown, not entirely even, but relatively, struggling the most with fourth and fifth years, but actually pretty relatively, again, not high, but even engagement of each. And I thought it was also interesting that juniors were the most involved, just not something I expected, but something to chew on. Moving on, for the specifically the college affiliations, I think this is a good conversation to have with our representatives of the colleges that seem to have a little bit less of a involvement. So for those of you who see your college as a little bit low engagement, be considering ways perhaps you as your senators could improve that engagement. What are we missing? What do you think we're missing? These are kind of the topics that we're gonna be looking into. Obviously, we're in a situation where we have a lot of involvement in the student body, in the Senate of certain groups, and those continue to rise and max out. But there are absolutely groups being left behind, and I think I'd like to get to the bottom of that. Next, we only had 11 international students answer our survey. I think this would be a great way, and a conversation we haven't had in the past, is how we can utilize groups like the International Student Association, SHAC, Student Athletic Advisory Council, these groups when we enter kind of survey time, perhaps kind of special push outs to those groups that are we're kind of lagging behind on in terms of representation, because again, we want this survey to be also accurate of student opinion, because if we're only being fed the opinions of a certain subset of this group, not going to do a good job matching kind of what the entire student body wants. Moving down to the gender gap, which I thought was another very interesting thing. It's actually really big. So we do have groups in our body that are gender specific. I'm thinking IFC, obviously our IFC rep is not here, but how can we get the male identifying students on this campus more engaged? And where is that disconnect? Why is that disconnect? Something to think about. Moving down through to UMSG exposure and knowledge, it is very clear that social media is our kind of number one, it's what we engage the most with. Again, it's not a huge climb from word of mouth, but we expect that. The best part is hopefully that when people reshare things, they'll also tell their friends about it. So I think it's very clear where we should be putting our most effort in kind of refining and putting our information. So social media, class visits, oh wait, are these not even, they're not in order, my bad, that's bad. Compilation, but anyway, as you can see, it kind of it shows where our students are getting the most information from us and where we're not really reaching them. I also think that the club and org aspect of it is something that we can really utilize this year. Vice President Rocky has already talked about doing club visits and whatnot. So another place that we can probably help get a little bit more visibility for our org. Moving into the next question, which is, did you know that UMSG is responsible for recognizing clubs? There's a lot of people who don't, which is too bad. It's kind of one of our biggest aspects. Again, open to ideas of how we can get those resources and the functions of student government more visible on this campus. Did you know that UMSG provides free legal services? Look at that one, not great. We pay for a lawyer and he does great. And I think that the general issue is that like students do not know about this service. I know that our legal services representative has already discussed ways that we can improve that. But again, let's all support her in that endeavor if we have any ideas. Moving forward, did you know where the weight center is or our offices are? No. I think something I would like to do potentially is some sort of like meet UMSG event where we all just kind of chill out in the weight center. We can give tours to students. I don't really know. I have no like set ideas for these things, but I'm all ears for them, and I would love us to talk about ways that we can become more visible as a body and as student leaders. So that's something to think about. Not enough people following our Instagram. So a common theme you're gonna see is that there's gonna be a lot of people saying, I don't know what you do, and then also in the same breath say, I don't follow or look at anything you send me. That's a hard thing to bridge. It doesn't mean we shouldn't try, but if there are other exciting ways that we can entice people to, especially those who are the most vocal criticisms of our org to come and interact with us, that would be awesome. And then student activity fee, again, more students need to know this. I don't like the concept. Again, I don't know how accurate it is, but this shows that about a third of the students don't know that we receive the majority of their student activity fee. That's not good. They should know that. So DOC, maybe some videos about the activity fee. I know I'm gonna do some op-eds, but also word of mouth, again, as we've seen, is a big one. So tell your friends if they're like, where does our student funds? Let them know that's right here. Moving on to, this doesn't again, another disappointing breakdown on question 13. People don't know, and it was very apparent that there are people in clubs receiving funding from student government that don't know the funding is from student government. I'm not saying that we need to toot our own horn or make sure everybody is thanking us 24/7, but it is important, especially as we get to a situation where money is tight, that students are engaged with where their money is going, because it does seem that a lot of the times after the fact, they have qualms with how we've spent it. I get that. That's totally they're allowed to. But if we can get them engaged while we're spending it, hopefully we can kind of bridge that divide. Moving down to question 14. Club funding process. This is where fun things come. So I was actually pretty happy with the results of this in kind of reference to what I had been hearing. Obviously, it's a pretty even breakdown between extremely satisfied and somewhat satisfied to neutral and the rest. But to be honest, if you go through it, a lot of the confusions and frustrations with the funding process has to do with two things. Number one, clarity, which I do believe that we can do a better job on. And we are actively working on making this easier, and as well as providing, like I said, getting ahead of things when we are in a situation where we have a budget crunch. Students need to know that, and they need to know that as soon as possible. So they are aware and can plan accordingly. I think it's important for us to go down through and read these individual bits. Some of them are funny, but some of them are also really important. Another thing that I was emboldened by is that people, especially on the mixed feedback side of things, while they're frustrated with how we have kind of bars and hurdles to hop, they understand why it has to be that way. And I think that's something that we can play on. A lot of students aren't aware of why, we have to have 3 separate meetings to give out thousands of dollars. It's actually really important because otherwise we would be cutting checks and not knowing where that money's going. So if we can do a better job, perhaps articulating that as well, maybe we can lessen the disappointment of students in that regard. Next is student organizations. I don't really have a lot in this regard. The only thing about something that I find interesting is the campus groups thing. Campus groups is something that we're kind of finally deciding to embrace truly in this organization. And I would honestly say that the lack of involvement in campus groups was probably in part by our lack of kind of integrating into that system. But we do pay $6,000 for this, and if it's not being like, this is kind of what we really do need to keep kind of an eye on. I believe in this. I think that the more that we do put into this and the more that the university moves stuff onto this, we'll see a better and larger engagement. But it's very clear right now that getting information out through that is not the best way to reach students. But perhaps while we kind of shuffle them towards getting their information and such from this app, because it will be a really nice central place for campus orgs to have, we continue to make sure that information is reaching them other ways. And then something about campus groups that we actually started talking about and are doing. Again, I compiled this all over the summer and kind of threw together my ideas. Was that the lack of use of campus groups in this organization. We're starting to use it for events and whatnot. I think it'll twofold, as Vice President Lima has already said. It's going to make it really easier. It's going to make it easier on us and them. We just have to be sure that we're embracing it more. So generally be thinking of ways that we can use campus groups to support our efforts. Moving on to, again, there's plenty of stuff in this that we can go into at a later date, but I don't want to bog us down. Interesting, Club X UMSG relations, that's 16B and 16A, or 16B and 16C. People said that they're the most familiar with the funding process and the least familiar with the funding process. So on pretty much even margins, which is ridiculous. In fact, I think they're exact even margins. Yeah, they are. So I don't know if Qualtrics got that wrong or not, but I just found that was super interesting. And I guess I have to look into that more because I'm looking at it and now I'm less confident that that's accurate. Now it looks like I just copied the same numbers. We'll get there. All right. This is my first time doing the survey compilation. Again, communication channels, website improvement, direct engagement, simplification and clarity. These are all the things that people are saying that they need. These are all the things that I'm saying that we need and that we will deliver on. But any ideas of how to do that would be awesome. And then moving into student entertainment, this is a pretty interesting one. Again, a space for a lot of criticism of our organization, rightfully so, it has the most money. But I thought that especially for the SEC, this is a good bunch of information to kind of chew on. Common themes are finding information, poor advertising, all the stuff that we've heard. Again, there's only so much we can do unless we start knocking doors on every dorm and being, hey, guess what? This is happening today. You should go. We can't force people to open their emails or follow us on Instagram, but we should still do our best to try and get them engaged and let them know where they can find this information. Another thing is there was an issue last year about clarifying information about student entertainment events being for undergrads. We have to make sure and emphasize that our money and the stuff that we do is way. That is okay. Anyway.
The senator could motion to add more minutes to this discussion. Senator, to motion.
I would like to motion.
I won't take more than 3.
I would like to motion 4 minutes.
Let me get my timer out.
Second, if that's the pleasure of the Senate, that's adopted. Any discussion or debate on adding 4 minutes to this discussion, Senator Kang?
I have a question. Okay, never mind, sorry.
Okay, seeing none, all those in favor of the motion? Senator, raise your hand for any of these 3. All those opposed? All those abstaining? Seeing a clear majority, there are now 4 more minutes for this discussion.
Hey, so this took longer than I thought it was gonna be, but the point is, and the aspect of this is just to get all of us really thinking about these things. I think in the past that the survey has kind of been done. We talk a big game about it and then we kind of throw it away and forget about it until it's survey time again. And then we do another survey and never look at the information. At least that's what's happened the last 2 years. That's not gonna happen this year. The reason I wanted to have a short session, and again, our meetings are long, so I'm sorry that I keep long-winding this, but I'm getting better and I'm recognizing this. This should be our point of reference for a lot of the questions that we have, at least in the past, about how we can improve this organization. I think that, again, the student entertainment one is very interesting. Something I want to touch on are, if you want to scroll down to 19, which is the list of, so something that people don't understand is the price of artists. So that's something we have to help with. But another thing is that if you scroll down to the bottom of this, there were only 9 individuals out of all 424 who talked about wanting a bigger concert again. So just another thing to bite on. Again, there is a difference between those who have criticized the criticisms of this organization on apps like Yik Yak and others, and true, genuine concerns. And I am a firm believer that if they have them, they will come to us. So as a general kind of disclaimer, I want everyone to keep their heads up in this work. Sometimes it can get really hard to be student leaders, and sometimes when the magnifying glass is on us, even when sometimes we have no power over the things that they claim that we do. People can get pretty hurtful and mean, but just don't let it bother you. And again, if it does bother you, please talk to us about it. I get it. Trust me. And the general gist is that this year I want to make sure that our focus is on the student body and kind of looking at it in the aggregate. We find ourselves looking at issues and putting out small fires as they come, but I want this organization to have a lot more of a long-term view of the stuff that we do, because we are a quick turnover. We have a few weeks and we need to prioritize. So yeah, I just encourage you all to go through this a little bit more. If you have any questions or want to talk about it with me, I'd love to. And for next semester, I would like to set up a survey committee that we can really dedicate to going through and creating and improving this. And also make sure that this information and the criticisms and constructive feedback that we've gotten from our student body doesn't just go to waste. Thank you. That's all I have.
Seeing no more new business, nothing under our name. Excuse me. We will now be moving into executive session. Any board members?
Will also not.
Yeah. Now, before we enter executive session, the clerk will call.
Cynthia Shelmerdine here, Ezekiel Delorme.